Thank you very much, Professor Crea, for your kind introduction and making it a little bit of a challenge. And also thank you, Professor Zhao, for your honorable invitation, and it's great to be back here. You're actually very much correct, Professor Crea. Yesterday, I think, during the opening ceremony, every speaker was touching on artificial intelligence. And when I browse to the program book, I see dozens of lectures now and also teaching lectures about AI. And so that's difficult, and I will touch upon what I have seen in the journal, also the contribution from China, and also how to get your work published about AI. No disclosures. So we are a proud member of the EuroHeart family, which is actually expanded this year with the Structural Heart journal as well. And last year I could proudly report to you that we had our first impact factor of 4, which actually quadrupled at the moment the amount of submissions. So we are very pleased, and now we have an impact factor of 4.4. We have a global reach, so we get as many submissions from Europe, the Americas, but also from Asia. And also thanks to all the contributions of you here of China. I don't know if any of the authors are here, but thank you very much for all of your submissions, and also thank you very much for your review work, what you have done. And then we'll touch upon a couple of these papers later on. So first, what are the top publications most read in the journal? Most read is often a very early indicator how topical a certain publication is. And risk predictors are the most what we get submitted to us. And often we think that AI is one thing, but actually it's an umbrella of many methodologies, which you can see here in the results section. It's a little bit blurry here on the screen, but there are so many different methods below AI that it's often difficult also to compare the different studies. And this is a meta-analysis comparing those different kind of studies of risk predictors using electronic health record data, which of course is the most important database we have in the hospital. So what it shows is that the machine learning methodologies outperforms the traditional methods, but there is a high heterogeneity which limits a little bit the application and also limits a little bit the clinical implementation, which is very important. We do not do our work in the clinic everywhere the same. And yesterday, after the opening ceremony, I also learned that in China, you have the same problems as we, and same challenges as we have in Europe. So it would be very good to team up together and that we try to challenge those obstacles. So electronic health record data is key. So we need to also maintain a good quality of the data we enter in that. However, comparing the different studies in the literature is also a little bit difficult because we tend to publish positive studies and not negative studies. People are not submitting negative studies as well. And we also would welcome, if you have a negative study, also to publish that, because that also informs. So potentially that the machine learning models are better and outperforming could also be not completely true, because we're not receiving that many negative trials. Remote monitoring is also an important one, and as was just presented by the previous speaker, we want to have wearables to have remote monitoring of heart failure patients. So this is one from the group of Yale. We are very much pioneers in this field, and they trained their methodology on more than 250,000 patients, which is quite a good and large population. They also externally validated their study against data from the UK Biobank, which is a public data source, very much used for this kind of studies. And external validation is key at this moment. So if you're developing something yourself, also try to do an external validation, otherwise you could get criticism from outside that the validation is not thorough enough. I will touch upon that later on. AI implementation is also difficult. This is a paper which is written by Professor Panos Vardas, an ex-president of the ESC, with his son, and he showed how the things are in Europe. We have the European Union AI Act, which makes it a little bit more complicated. AI is software, but software is these days also a medical device, and you have to follow the rules of the medical device implementation. And what he says is that the AI actually holds back a little bit rapid implementation, and we have to find the balance between implementation, regulation, and also validation. What is important that we also have the harmonization. What I yesterday also heard here in China, every hospital has its own ruling, has its own silo of data. So we need to harmonize the methodologies, what we are applying, and also harmonize the data sets, what we have. We need to be and to stay in control with a human oversight. Don't let the AI software output data which are not controllable by human experts. And we need to find the balance between the innovation and the safety. Now the top publications which are most cited over a year, which is a little bit less not reliable, I would say, but it takes always a little bit of time before a paper is matured and cited enough. But what's very much cited was this group of people within the ESC who looked to digital strategies to improve heart failure therapy. And it touches upon a lot of strategies which would be interesting of you if you are in this field to take upon. So virtual consult, remote monitoring, implantable device data like the CardioMEMS, what's just mentioned, and also clinical support systems. And there are some evidence and gaps, small studies often, but the outcome needs to be proven that it's also cost effectiveness, otherwise we are not getting the funding to implement that in our clinical practice. So we have to look to scalable implementations, equitable AI tools, rigorous trials, and also strategies to prevent alert fatigue, which could also be a problem in the clinic. So this is also a review paper and a meta-analysis about PCI risk prediction. And here also they compared machine learning models with traditional risk predictors. They did a meta-analysis of 13 studies with 4.1 million patients, looking at all-cause mortality, major bleeding, and MACE using C-statistics. And their findings were that machine learning outperformed but slightly traditional models for MACE and bleeding, and there was no significant mortality risk. But also here, the author says that machine learning shows an incremental benefit, but it lacks robust validation. So we have to look to more and better validation methods. And clinical adaptations remains a little bit uncertain at the moment. This is something a little bit more difficult, comes from the surgeons. The surgeons are always liking 3D modalities because they are used more to see the heart in 3D than we as cardiologists. And the objective here was to test if those mixed reality actually enhanced the surgical strategies. And they showed that in 68% of the cases actually it improved the team consensus with a lower complication rates when surgery was aligned, and it was in Norway. Although a small group, but it is very interesting and it was pretty good cited. Then we have also a category what we call editor's choice. This is a paper that uses the ESC guidelines to implement that in the electronic health record system as a sort of co-pilot. So that while you are working in the electronic health system, that you get, let's say, directions from the ESC guidelines which are then implemented. The ESC also has a chatbot which is online. If you register yourself to the ESC website, you can use the ESC guideline chatbot to ask questions about the patients and to get an answer which is then tested by the guideline. And this is an algorithm testing to see if patients need a functional testing or physiological testing. It is also being developed by the group in Yale. They analyzed 134,000 patients. Also here they used the UK Biobank as an external validations. And they showed that their assist, what they call it, testing reduced death and MI by 19 to 26%, if that's being used. And also they looked to another trial which was published in 2015, The Promise in New England Journal. And also here, their ML-assisted testing was more better than what they had. And the algorithm-guided test selection improved the outcome and also highlights the disparities, supports future trial of data-driven decision support. So now a couple of papers from China. One about that reminds me of my own work on the early developments in the 1990s on 3D echocardiography. And that's using just a 2D probe, make a number of recordings of a patient just by hand, and then you get the 3D reconstructions. So without the need of an expensive machine. So probably you could also do that with handheld devices remotely if you wish. They also, this paper looked to probably possible sources of bias white versus colored people in automated AI segmentation of MRI data, which could indeed be sometimes difficult to find a cause of bias in the data sets, because not every data set has a balanced amount of people. And you can see here that the bias mainly originated from non-heart reasons, cropping reduced but not eliminated bias race encoded in model latent space and some covariate influence results. So in-space distributional differences can drive bias, and mitigation requires the dataset diversity and also pre-processing strategies. And of course, nothing can be complete without the ChatGPT kind of paper. This is ChatGLM. GLM is now for natural language processing. So this was to assess the feasibility for real-world data extraction from electronic data sources here in Chinese compared to manual processes. And they could show that it is efficiency improving by 80%, so that saves you a lot of time. And it accelerates the clinical data extraction with an acceptable accuracy, and localized models outperforms the general local language machines. So the next question is how to bring all those AI to the bedside. And this is a nice editorial that is written by Charalampos Antoniadis, actually referring to the paper of Jill I showed in the editor's choice. And if you look to the whole process, we start here at the top left side with what is in the journals. So let's say the early developments. After the early developments, we have to translate it and to get the AI implemented into the equipment, and therefore we need the industry. The industry has to take care that it is being regulated. The most well known is the FDA by example, but it is not for Europe. Then we need other kind of regulations. If that is being done, then we have to look to the cost effectiveness, because otherwise we cannot get the funding from the directors or from the insurance companies. And then we end up with the clinical implementation. We can test it. Maybe it's a little bit the chicken and the egg, because clinical implementation and cost effectiveness are one and each other. So what comes first? But this is the pathway we have to go to get it from here to the clinical implementation. That said, we are pleased now that we have, let's say, for the echocardiography, AI tools which are available at the moment. Fully automated image analysis, fully automated report generation for, let's say, the basic echocardiography is now available, and we can all use that in clinical implementation. But we still need to be in control, and you can be on control if you use this. The same actually is now for EKG. So the two workhorses, diagnostic workhorses we have in cardiology, EKG as well as echocardiography, we have now the availability of this, and we need to implement it for prospective trials to further study the effectiveness. This paper was very much cited and also very much downloaded about to detect non-STEMI infarction of the patients, which saved actually 3 hours that the patient was earlier in the cath lab than with the traditional methods. One thing what we need with all those new developments is education. Not only for the young generation, because the young generation, everybody is using now ChatGPT or another large language model, but also for the older generation in the clinical arena. There are some fears of losing competence. This paper was being highlighted by Professor Erik Topol on social media not so long ago about gastroenterologists who lost actually the detection accuracy of colonoscopy So we have to also take care that we don't lose, let's say, our competences on reading an EKG in the future if we are going to rely on AI. And there are a lot of concerns about AI. And the reliability, it is a black box, the ethics, it hallucinates, the regulations, the privacy and transparency. That is the downside, and you often get, if we are sending papers out, reviewer comments back, and also we as editors are looking to it, has that been solved? The good news is that we can address all those AI concerns, let's say most of it. The reliability with the robust validations to use external data sets and good validation. The black box, you can tackle that with explainable AI, as we call it. Grub and Lime and Tripod AI are emerging methods to use for your own work to take care that the black box is going to disappear and that it is more transparent what the AI model is doing under the hood. The ethics, you need informed consent, fairness and accountability. Hallucination, we can overcome that by fact-checking, confidence scores, but also human has to stay in the loop. The regulations, we need a risk classification. What kind of harm can an AI method do to a patient? We need good documentations like the medical device regulation we have in Europe and the AI Act. The privacy, we need to take care that the data is really anonymized, especially if you are working in the cloud, that you don't have cyber security attacks and that the patient information is being hijacked. And a good compliance and transparency. And we need to go to open science, clear communication also and engagements of all the stakeholders. And we also feature within the journal an educational format. It is a data paper, which we added last year. And without good quality is of course a little bit more we could emphasize on, but a huge amount of data. Otherwise, we are not making any progress with AI. The UK Biobank is a good example. Visionet for physiological signals from the MIT is also a good example of that. So public data sets would be fantastic. That would also help to test reproducibility all around the globe. So if you have a database which you have used and it is anonymized and you want to share it publicly, we are looking forward to get that kind of papers with a link to it. And you will see that will certainly improve the amount of citations you get for that kind of work. Another one, what we are featuring for educational format is a teaching series. How did you implement it? Try to teach us also around the world how you tackled all the challenges we are facing with AI in clinical implementation. So of course the journal is there for your educations. We are also working on a new textbook within the ESC. That is the textbook number 4. Will be finished at the end of next year. 12 chapters of digital health with 6 chapters of AI in it. We had a masterclass of the ESC last summer in Amsterdam that will be done again next year if you're interested to dive deep in it and to get teaching from experts in this field. And we have the digital summit of the ESC, which will be held next month, 20 and the 21st of November in Berlin. And take care also of this next year. Professor Kusic was already touched upon it. He is the chair about the Congress and the spotlight. There will be artificial intelligence, but then also with the focus on clinical implementation. So if you are working in this field, abstract submission will end mostly at the end of February. And we are looking forward to receive much more from you as we have done over the past year. So thank you very much again for all your submissions, and we are looking forward to seeing much more. Thank you very much.